Chiefs Kingdom, and welcome to the Milwaukee Chiefs cast, live from the Wolf Den. I'm Chris.
And I'm Josh, and tonight we're going to be talking free agency, the draft, and a little bit of all things football. Big reminder that all Southeast Wisconsin residents are invited to join us for game day. Please visit mkechiefsfans.com for more about the group, and please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
Today, as always, we will be talking about your Kansas City Chiefs. With our guest today, Kansas City Chiefs beat writer from The Athletic, we have Nate Taylor on. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you, fellas, for having me. Glad to be here, and who knew that we had finally turned the calendar to April. After many days, it felt like where I couldn't, stay away from my phone because of free agency. But glad to be here.
Yeah, good stuff. Nate, thanks for being on. We are, of course, presented by Complete Weddings and Events, your leading provider of photo, video, DJ, photo booth, lighting, and coordination services. Please visit them at completewedo.com, and let's get to work. So our first question we have for you is, do the signings of Reed or Blythe change anything in your mock draft? I know you put out a pretty substantial one here recently. So what's different after those two signings?
Yeah, it's a good question, Josh. And it's always fun to do mock drafts because they are – it gets my brain to think not only about the team, but how other teams kind of near them in the draft may look at certain positions. And the funny thing that I always do is all right, I've finished this mock draft. I spent a couple hours looking at this prospect or this prospect, and it might be relevant for like 4 hours because we're still doing free agency, right? I was surprised by the Jarran Reed signing. And I think a lot of people in the Chiefs organization were surprised that, wow, we could actually get a quality defensive tackle to put next to Chris Jones. So it did affect my mock draft moving forward. I think I'm going to do at least 2 more before the draft on April 29th. And I think the Austin Blythe signing sort of leads me to feel like, okay, the Chiefs don't feel like they have to choose between a tackle or a center in the first round if they stay at 31 or if they decide to move up in the trade. Now I feel like if you're the Chiefs, you can be like, hey, let's really identify who's the best tackle who might be available. And if we get to center, maybe in the 3rd, 4th round, we can get somebody who may develop into a starter beyond next season. Where before Austin Blythe signed, I think the Chiefs felt like maybe they were not necessarily cornered, but they felt some pressure to say, okay, if we don't get Austin Ryder back and we have to, fill that position through the draft, or maybe Nick Allegretti goes from guard to center, like, is that the best option for day one of the 2021 season? I don't believe that was the case. So the Chiefs sort of agreed with that and said, let's get a veteran who was at least started at that position last year with the Rams. Pretty adequate job. And now we can go try to develop our own starting center in the draft if that's what they want to do. But I think pass rush is still an issue, I would say. So maybe that's something that you could target in the 2nd round, whereas I didn't really find a quality defensive end because it's like, oh, wait, all the other teams in this mock draft through the Pro Football Focus simulator that I used had already taken all of them. And so it does change the draft, I think, a little bit just because you do have a starting center now. You definitely have at least a 3rd pass rusher to sort of give you more clarity as to, hey, maybe we should do tackle, cornerback, tight end. Like, there's other positions, I think, that are rising, whereas those kind of fall back a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. We need more pass rushers. You know who else does? All other 31 teams. I mean, that's such a premium position. It's just, it's crazy. It's not a good position to be in where you have to have one of those and you don't have a top 5 pick. It's crazy. Chris, anything that you wanted to follow up on about any of that?
Yeah, no, I was really happy to see Blythe get signed because, the thought of, us intensely waiting to see whether or not Austin Ryder is going to accept the offer that I think we extended to him over a week ago. And then, the thought of taking another interior offensive lineman with some pretty high offseason capital, be it a high draft pick or more free agent money, it made me a little bit nervous. But to see the value that they got in signing Blythe, I think that's, to me, that fills a really big hole because I think you get a lot better value in the early rounds at, tackle and edge than you would at center.
Yep.
So I like how you essentially said that a mock draft is kind of like a car. It loses half its value the second you drive it off the lot. The ink doesn't even.
It feels so good when that
It
car.
feels so good when you sign the paperwork and
Yeah,
everything.
you got your hands on the steering wheels. You're like, all right, I got a new ride. And then the moment they drive off, they all kind of like laugh at you because they're like, oh, you'll be here back in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But they're a drug and we're addicted. So we're gonna keep doing them. You'll keep writing them. We'll keep reading them. It's gonna be great. So let's talk a little bit about the draft itself. And we put all of this together and you take into account a handful of trades and things of that nature. So what is a potential trade scenario that another team, towards the top, that's maybe going for one of the quarterbacks, that could happen that would essentially cut the entire draft in half, before we even get out of the top 10? What's a scenario you could see?
I know Chiefs fans probably don't want this, but I get the sense that if you're the Denver Broncos, it's time to make a move.
Yeah.
I've started watching Trey Lance video. I don't know how good he'll be in the next, level coming from North Dakota State. But man, those highlights are incredible. So if we assume, and I'm taking a large assumption here, but I would tell Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, okay, if it's Trevor Lawrence, if it's Zach Wilson, take Justin Fields. Don't be stupid. And so I think a lot of the pressure then becomes, okay, if Denver moves up because they want to take Trey Lance, that really could fracture a lot of thinking within the draft. And how do you anticipate other players who are obviously highly touted where they would slide down? And in some ways, it's like, does it benefit you if you're the Chiefs for a team like the Broncos to do that? Because that's one more pick that a tackle wouldn't necessarily be there, whether the Broncos move up or down. But at the same time, if the Broncos get their next potentially very good to great quarterback, then the division becomes much easier for it to be a more competitive balance between how much the Chiefs have just ramshacked through the AFC West. So you're not going to get an automatic home playoff game if we assume that Justin Herbert is staying, as consistent, if not getting better in year 2 and year 3, and maybe Trey Lance provides some stability for the Broncos. What I don't want, I think, if you're a Chiefs fan, and what I've started to realize is if you get to that 12 to 22 slot, and you'll see this in a lot of mock drafts, all of a sudden you'll just start seeing names that are relevant to the Chiefs who may potentially be taken. And that's where, if you're Brett Veach and Andy Reid, how much are you going to sweat on draft night, at least on the round 1, to say, oh my Lord, now we're at pick 25, which is what I sort of found out in my mock draft, which is like, okay, I think there's only one tackle that I feel like is legitimately a first-round player in Tevin Jenkins at Oklahoma State. So do you make a move up to do that? What does it take in order to execute such a trade? Usually it takes at least one additional pick in obviously swapping first-round picks. Other teams may ask for more from the Chiefs because they know how desperate they are in terms of needing an offensive tackle. So keep that in mind if that happens on draft day. But I think the Broncos, because of their quarterback situation, and if Mac Jones is still available for the Patriots at 15, that's like the last quarterback, right? I assume that this is a 5-quarterback draft class, at least in the first round. If Mac Jones, the longer I think he's on the board, I think the more it helps the Chiefs. Because again, it's just from a positional standpoint as to what other teams need versus what your need is. But I am fascinated to know that with Patrick Mahomes being the best player in the league, with the way he ran around in the Super Bowl, with the immense pressure that you've already felt to revamp the entire offensive line, I would say that there's more than a 50% chance that Brett Veach moves up, regardless of what happens before the Chiefs feel like they've identified the tackle they need to go get. Because if they don't take a tackle in the first round, I think a lot of people will be scratching their heads.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with that. And you kind of addressed the next question that we were going to ask, and that's how many quarterbacks are in the draft? And you said 5. And so I'm assuming the 5 that you're talking about are Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Fields, and Jones. Is that the order that you would put him in? That's what ESPN's ranking him right now, or would you put him in a slightly different order? And then the follow-up question that I'll just throw out right away is, where do you put Kellen Mond? Is he number 6 or?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I guess there's a chance that if you wanted to develop that quarterback, maybe you could jump back into the first round if you're a team similar to what the Ravens did, right? The Ravens went mostly to the first round. They were like, okay, we feel like we're going to get good value. We're going to move up and take, someone like Lamar Jackson. Now, I'm not saying any of these players are Lamar Jackson.
Sure.
But hey, if you want to do that, if you want to go from the Russell Wilson, Andy Dalton sort of line of thinking, like, hey, maybe we can develop this guy in a couple of years, then maybe there is 6 quarterbacks that can be taken in the first round of this draft. I do get the sense that as much as I love Trevor Lawrence, and I feel like I've been overly sold Trevor Lawrence because he's just so good. He's so good.
He is, yeah.
But Zach Wilson, I don't know, man. Like, how often do we get the consensus top pick to be the best quarterback? I mean, hey, there's a reason, Mitchell Trubisky went ahead of Patrick Mahomes. I was of the belief at the time that the most can't-miss guy was Deshaun Watson. That didn't prove to be the case. If you put Patrick Mahomes on any team based on his skill set, that team was going to be better. I wonder if there's similar things with Fields and Wilson, but I do tend to agree with ESPN's ranking that over the course of his college career, based on the accuracy, the size, and he's still mobile, although people don't really talk about Trevor Lawrence in that way, then sure, he should be number 1. I would be fascinated if the New York Jets chose Justin Fields over Zach Wilson. I don't know if that's going to happen. Then third goes to whoever San Francisco ends up landing with. I'm not sold on Mac Jones. Just, he's super accurate, but that's sort of an Alabama quarterback production generated off the assembly line.
Colt McCoy.
I mean, the dude had an amazing offensive line. Every time I watch Alabama film, I'm like, was he ever pressured? This was like the most perfect system. And I'll give Mac credit. They won every game. They dominated every team. Every receiver was wide open. So I just don't know. I'm not as sold on Mac Jones just because there's not enough of a variance as to, hey, did I see you rise to the occasion? Did I see you go above and beyond what the circumstances were, similar to what Patrick Mahomes, similar to what other quarterbacks in the league do? But is he? I mean, I guess he could be Tom Brady to some degree in that sort of realm. Maybe he could be someone like Drew Brees based on timing, accuracy, precision, if you create the offense in that certain manner. But man, I just look at that Alabama offense. I'm like, can we just pick everybody from that offense? Like, if you pick anybody from Alabama, you're just like, that offense was surgical how good they were. And Mac Jones benefits, but hey, the quarterback is supposed to put the ball on time. He did that. I know it's going to be a lot harder because there's obviously more parity in the NFL than in college.
Can I ask a follow-up real quick on that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm curious to know, because I was thinking a lot about Joe Burrow as you're explaining this. I'm trying to understand maybe the difference between Joe Burrow and Mac Jones, because it seemed like Joe Burrow had the same type of talent around him at LSU. I guess, do you happen to know why he, I guess, was thought of as the hands down number 1 pick in last year's draft, and why Mac Jones would be considered at least in the top 3 of years? Is it really just relativity, or is there something more to that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Chris. I think it does tend to lead to, like, when do you enter the draft and who's around you at your position obviously matters. I think if Trevor Lawrence was in last year's draft class, I personally would probably still give Trevor Lawrence a higher grade, just because I think he has a more accurate deep ball. Not what I saw. I mean, Joe Burrow had a phenomenal storybook season where it just all kind of came together. But you're right. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was like really, really good in college.
Justin Jefferson. And
we all know the receivers were like amazing. So it is similar. I will say that their offensive line was nowhere near as good as Alabama's was this year. And so I do think there's still some upside to Joe Burrow in terms of mobility. But here's the issue, right? With me saying that, he went to a team that hadn't had a real ready to play, put in place to protect the quarterback at the highest level in Cincinnati. And that's not Cincinnati's fault. When you have the number 1 pick, your team is usually trash. So, like, you can only do so much in one offseason, even though you know you're going to take the best quarterback. And it's unfortunate that he got hurt, but I have the same concerns about all these quarterbacks outside of whoever goes to San Francisco. That appears to be the dream scenario. Where even if I was like Zach Wilson's agent, I would start to be like, do we want to go to New York? Maybe we should like play this a certain direction to get us in a Kyle Shanahan offense with like Trent Williams and Alex Mack.
Sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo for a year.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, I mean, that, like, whatever San Francisco's doing is really intriguing to me, because it seems like, not, you know, a good friend of mine, Seren Petro, said this on a 10. It seems like the 49ers have started to learn, like, oh, the reason we lost to the Chiefs was because of this certain philosophy. We have the same coach and the same talent around. Let's maybe reverse course and line of thinking. I just wonder with Mac Jones, can we put him in the right system? And when the defender comes free, and I think everybody should think about this, no matter who the quarterback prospect is. Patrick Mahomes was sacked 3 times in the Super Bowl, but he could have been sacked about 15. Your quarterback, in some ways, at this league right now, based on the pass rushers that Josh mentioned, and just how much we're in a pass-happy league, your quarterback's got to be able to evade the guy that comes free, whether it's coming off a blitz or someone who just beats your man up front. And we just didn't get enough of a sample size to where, at least with Joe Burrow, I said, hey, he has the ability to move. He has the ability to extend plays. That ACC championship game, I think it was against Georgia 2 years ago, where he moved around and it just looked like, this is incredible. Like, I was sort of blown away. Whereas Mac could just stand in the pocket and deliver the ball on time. And it was glorious to watch, because even Ohio State tried a couple things in the championship game that I noticed, and it's just like, they're too talented, and the dude doesn't make mistakes. So that's his best. Mac Jones' best case is he really didn't make any mistakes when everything was on time and on schedule. The problem is we don't have enough sample of when things weren't going right, because the coaching staff and the talent around him was so darn good.
This sounds like a Patriots quarterback. I mean, everything you're talking about, it's just,
it really does.
He's going to the Patriots.
Bill Belichick's dream here, yeah.
So let's stay on the AFC East for one more. How are the Jets going to screw this up? Do you see a world where they stay with Darnold and they trade the number 2 pick to the Broncos or something like that? How is this going to go south for them?
And the thing is, I like Robert Salah. I like him. I know he's a good coach. Players really respect.
I like Robert Salah as well.
Yeah. I know the coaches really, the players, I should say, really love him and obviously have a lot of admiration and respect for him. The Johnson family appears to be like saying all the right things for once, right? After kind of toiling for the last 5 or 6 years. I don't know what they were doing with Adam Gase. Everybody in the league was like, we don't know what they're doing with Adam Gase, but hey.
Adam Gase didn't know what they were doing with Adam Gase.
No.
So the Johnson,
he's like, am I supposed to be here right now? I got this job, right?
It was crazy. I think the Johnson family is starting to figure it out. Ownership has started to understand that, hey, we need to not just be a team that wants to make a splash in free agency, but like actually have a plan in place. I don't know how they're going to screw this up. They shouldn't screw it up. One thing I could say is, like, the problem is that good luck, Robert. You're coaching against Bill Belichick,
whatever the Bills put together, and
Brian Flores,
Sean McDermott, who has the best roster in the division, and Brian Flores, who has coached above his head the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And has 1 million first-round draft picks in the next 4 years.
Yeah. So it's already a tough ask for the Jets. I don't know how to screw it up, but it's completely within the realm of possibility, given recent history and just the idea that, like, okay, I want to see it for like the first, like, now that we're playing 17 games, it's like I have to calibrate all my like projections. But I do want to see it for like maybe the first 6 to 7 games. Okay, we know the Jets aren't really talented. We know they're going to basically hand the keys to a rookie quarterback. They're going to have to be conservative in a lot of ways. But I don't know if they fully supported Sam Darnold, either with talent or with misguided talent that didn't pan out the way that they assumed. So they're going to have to do that in future years, right? I really think Corey Davis is great. I really think he can fit the mold of like a very high number 2 receiver. But look, man, it only takes a couple turnovers. It only takes a couple back page headlines. And we see this over and over again where it's just like, dang, the Jets have done it again, you know, which tells you how impressive it is that Rex Ryan got that team to 2 AFC championship games somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I don't think that we have any clue how good of a quarterback Mitch Trubisky or Sam Darnold are. We have no clue. And that's 2 big market teams that the fan base just turned on them, and they never had a chance. They never had a chance. And you know, God bless whoever ends up under center for the Jets this year, because your odds are that happening.
Yeah. You're gonna have to go in that locker room and be a true leader, like a true bona fide. I know what I need to do to be successful, and I need grown men who have never really seen me play up until, you know, early September to sort of follow my lead. I mean, quarterback and coach, it matters so much. Yeah. Whoever they pick, I mean, that's who Robert Saleh is going to put his, you know, that's who you tie at the hip to. And so whatever those guys do, how much can the rest of the 52 men with them follow them or improve themselves or make sure that they're competitive to where they see where this is headed? Because I think a lot of times, particularly like you mentioned, these teams in big markets, if you have a rough September, it goes south very quickly. And in the NFL, you need guys to be as tight as possible beyond just being talented. Everybody's talented in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what cap casualties are the Chiefs going to be able to take advantage of between now and the beginning of the season?
I put this out there. It's still a slim chance. What are the Eagles doing with Zach Ertz? Like,
I don't know. It'd be great
already. Like, exactly. Nobody, like, Howie, I'll tell you right now, no one's trading for Zach Ertz. So, as I put before, you know, I know the Chiefs have been interested in Zach Ertz to some degree. Obviously, they went and signed Blake Bell, so the odds of that are short. The Eagles playing hardball makes it shorter. You know, I didn't know that Jaron was going to be a cap casualty, and honestly, probably should have been. You know, as I wrote in The Athletic, it's like they chose Carlos Dunlap over Jaron Reed. I'm like, I know one player plays the edge and one player plays the interior, and I asked Michael Sean Smith, our reporter for The Athletic, who covers the Seahawks, I'm like, what are they doing? He's just like, they traded for Carlos Hyde, or not Carlos Hyde. They traded for Carlos Dunlap, so they have to make it work. They sort of box themselves, and you know, off goes Jaron Reed, who I think, you know, made as best a decision as he could make in a shortened free agency period. Man, I have not looked at enough rosters yet, but I know the Chargers are in need of situations right now to where they may have to make some moves relatively quickly. The Saints still like the Saints continue to be in just this like one in, one out. And so a lot of people, you know, kind of got into a tizzy on Twitter when they signed, you know, Tano Passanio, but it's like that's what their cap is mandating, to go get Tano Passanio so that they can release somebody that'll come through and give them a little bit more wiggle room. I think the Eagles, beyond just Zach Ertz, may be still in play to some degree, just because they are, I think, getting into that Miami Dolphins territory of let's free some space, let's try to get some picks, even though nobody's going to trade for Zach Ertz, or no one should, I should mention. Maybe they'll find a team silly enough to do the deal, but I think those are some teams that you could have an idea of. who may be a cap casualty. But I think as we get closer to the draft, more teams should have an understanding of what they need to obviously pay their, their draft class. And then if you're coming out of that, you still got to do unrestricted free agents, undrafted free agents, and the idea too of, okay, now that we know what our draft class is, holy smokes, we still got 2 holes at blank positions, So the Chiefs are always pretty aggressive, but I think the way their cap situation looks right now, there's not a logical player that I think gives them enough space in terms of the salary cap to make reason for moving forward. I know some people have said that, it's surprising to them that Laurent Duvernay-Tardif is still on the team, even though Damian Wilson isn't on the team. But if you look at the contract structure, it kind of costs a lot to let go of Laurent Duvernay-Tardif in terms of dead cap before you free up any cap that you could actually use this year. And he's at a more valuable position than Damian Williams is, just because they need all the help they can get at the offensive line based on last year. And I think the Chiefs, in choosing to move on from Damian Williams, decided that Darrell Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are the 2 backs that they want to move with going forward for next season.
Yeah, and getting rid of the doctor would be pretty bad PR at this point too. I mean, let's be clear about that. That wouldn't be a good call. Shoring up the middle of the offensive line has been impressive to watch that happen. I just hope that the next time Darrell Williams has a ball hit him in the face after Mahomes laid out like Superman, that he catches it.
What a weird day, man. What a weird day.
So you mentioned that the Saints are a 1 in, 1 out. Is that club even cool anymore? Or is this Studio 54 when 1990 hit?
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, think about this. They have been trying to tell Drew Brees, "Hey man, when's that Instagram post gonna drop? Like, when can we move on? We gotta clear cap space."
Yeah,
dog.
seriously.
Seriously. And so Drew Brees built him up until the final day before the new league year, before free agency really began. And he finally told everybody, "Okay, I'm gonna retire." But in normal years, they wouldn't have let go of a guy like Trent Hendrickson. But this is the business of trying to win at all costs when you got a Hall of Fame quarterback at the end of your career, and you just keep passing the future on. And so they can't be a player in free agency really outside of going to get guys like Tom Passing.
Well, the good news for him is the Buccaneers are good. The Panthers seem to be on the upswing, and the Falcons might be able to put something together as well. So good luck to them.
And who's their quarterback?
I don't know. Jameis Winston, I guess.
That's who we would all say, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
They told Drew Brees, "We need that Instagram post immediately." And then they went to Taysom Hill and was like, "We're gonna give you a contract that is not really a contract. It's basically like, we gotta stretch. We gotta avoid all these years just to make it work." And he may not be their quarterback. It may be Jameis Winston. So and again, Jameis Winston didn't even get a big deal on the market either. I mean, it was more advantageous to Jameis to return because he already knows the system, he knows the offense. He has a better chance to start there than maybe elsewhere. But they couldn't really afford Jameis Winston if this was a normal offseason either. But again, it benefits you because you want to start for the Saints. This is as much as we can give you.
Jameis Winston's kind of running out of chances. I think people have kind of gotten tired of him. So that there might be a little more of that going on as well. But 100% agree with you. So let's talk about one big hole that we haven't addressed with the Chiefs. Number 2 wide receiver. What are we doing there? I know you wrote an article about keeping the optimism up. So what do you realistically think we're doing there?
I think the Chiefs will do something similar to what they did at defensive line, right? Is that, okay, if we can get a player like Jaron Reed to add next to Chris Jones, Frank Clark, Taco Charlton, Colin Saunders, Trishawn Wharton, the more the better, because eventually somebody will prove themselves, whether that's in training camp or early on in the season, that they've earned that role. Whether that's first or third down situations with Spagnuolo defense. I feel like on offense, they're going to have a similar thing. I would be shocked if the Chiefs don't take a receiver in this draft. It's pretty much a prerequisite now, I believe, because they were really high on, Corey Davis, but Corey Davis can make more money elsewhere. Makes total sense. They felt like Josh Reynolds could be an upside play to what Sammy Watkins could provide from a physicality, route running, stability standpoint.
Being on the field.
Yep. Yes, he is younger. He is more healthy at this point in his career, has less injuries to him. He chose elsewhere. The Juju Smith-Schuster situation was fascinating just because Juju basically presented himself that he loved Pittsburgh, but I only love you guys enough to play one more year because I want to make more money next year. So
yeah.
And the Chiefs offered essentially the same amount of money. I don't know how much you would have made in the real incentives that could have pushed it up to 11. A lot of those incentives, based on what general manager Brett Veach has done in the past, is tied to the postseason. So not only do you have to get through the regular season, but you have to be productive in the postseason to get some of these incentives. And they can sort of stretch that out over the cap too, because that gives you more space to go pursue somebody on the trade deadline. So again, smart for the Chiefs, smart for, Juju, because he feels like he's going to get more targets with Ben Roethlisberger, regardless of playing next to, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. The answer should be Michael Hardman.
It should be. I agree with you.
The problem is he going to be consistent? Is he going to be better? How much faith are you going to have? Look, I've seen it with my own eyes where Patrick will give McColl an opportunity, and you can look at this on film for the last season.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't go a certain way on that certain snap, well, I have Travis Kelce to trust. I have Tyreek Hill to trust. We're not going to, run things that are to your strength. If I'm throwing you the ball, like there are two plays that come to mind to me right now visually of McCole Hardman's season where he didn't do what you're supposed to do as a second-year receiver. The first game against the Buffalo Bills, Chiefs get the ball right before halftime. They make the right play, a little swing pass, move the ball. Okay, the clock's moving. Okay, get everybody set. McCole Hardman's supposed to run basically a hook route in the middle of the field. He's wide open because Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are running longer routes. The Bills concede the short intermediate zone. Patrick understands that, throws the ball to McCole, complete drop. Mm-hmm. And it's at that point where it's like, there's nobody around you. The ball was on time. You ran your route pretty good. You have to catch the ball before you want to run. And I think his eyes were more geared toward, I have all this space, I'm going to run after the catch. The second play that comes to mind is against the Broncos in the second game this year, where Patrick knew he was running an out route, scrambled to the right, understood that the ball was going to be put in a certain place that was going to be away from the defender, but you have to have trust that the receiver is going to flatten their route out as they're breaking to the sideline. Instead, he sort of rounded it out, and it ended up being a near interception, to which Patrick Mahomes looks at McCole and literally in front of the entire world does this. Come back to the ball, like flatten out. Like, this is week 10, dog. I shouldn't have to be worried about this now versus maybe week 2, week 3 of your
practice 10 that we should have figured this out.
This is not your rookie season anymore. This is year 2. We want to see real growth, real maturity. And so that's the issue for McCole. This is a real make or break year, I think, for him. Just because he's going to get more opportunities because one, Sammy's not going to be there. Yes, you got Demarcus Robinson back, but he will serve pretty much the same role as what I've been told on his one-year deal. So it should be McCole Hardman. But here's the thing that Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, and Brett Veach, I think, are going to do, along with Greg Lewis, the receivers coaches. Let's draft somebody in the second, third, or fourth round and say, okay, here's the competition.
You all figure this out.
Essentially, I think that's the way it's going to play out. T.Y. Hilton was the last receiver on the free agency market that makes sense for the Chiefs. I think basically now you're looking at guys on 1-year prove-it deals. I don't think they're going to go on that route. So get a tackle in the first round. And if you're McCole Hardman, start praying that the Chiefs select a tight end in one of those middle rounds and not a receiver, because that could have a little bit of a dynamic to it where it's like, hey, we know Travis Kelce's 31 and Blake Bill's only going to be here for 1 more year, or he's only on a 1-year deal. Let's maybe take I have been screaming that they should take a tight end for like 3 years. So maybe they take a tight end in the 3rd round, but if they don't, they're probably looking for a receiver who they feel like can challenge you for snaps. And it's time to prove your value beyond just being a speed threat, a gadget player, or somebody that can be used on an end around when the defense is obviously looking for Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and while you're at it, praying for tight end to be drafted, pray for clarity that you flatten out your out routes and actually just take the role that's yours.
and the sad thing is, we as human beings always remember the last thing we just saw.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get it. The AFC Championship game was rough because they were down 9-0 because he muffed a punt.
Yeah.
Now, it is great coaching. It is unbelievable coaching that not only did Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy find a certain play that would work, the end around that he went for about 60 yards, but then they had to play in the direct mindset too to be like, let's give him a touchdown as well, which is obviously that sort of screen, pass play, quick screen. He obviously scores with blockers in front of him. And so there's always having to be this emotional boost to McCole Hardman in a way that shows how young he is still in his career, and it does take guys time to be super successful. The problem is, I feel like a large part of the game plan for the Super Bowl was dependent upon McCole Hardman, at least in the first half of the game, where the Buccaneers were like, we're not letting 10 get past us. No, like we're doubling him. Wherever he is, we're double teaming him. They're going to try to be very, very physical with Travis Kelce. And look, Latavius White is a great linebacker, one of the best who could actually go up against Travis and not get embarrassed. So they have a chess piece to go against yours. So if Sammy Watkins is coming back from injury and we don't know what we're going to get from him, all right, here are 4 plays that I can show you in the first half where McCole Hardman's got to win his one-on-one matchup or look for the ball or not stop his route or not be confused by how the Buccaneers disguise their coverage and then shade it in a different way post-snap. Patrick Mahomes these things and is like, don't you see this?
Exactly.
Which tells you how excellent Patrick Mahomes is.
Exactly.
Where he literally looks at McCole and is like, did you see what they were doing there? Did you see the guy blitz? And I knew he was leaving where you were going, and I threw you the ball, and you didn't see that? You and so how many targets did McCole Hardman have in the second half of the Super Bowl? The answer was
0.
0.
Yeah. So really what Mahomes needs is his own Julian Edelman that just understands everything on the level. Chris, do you have any other football questions before we ask our quick college basketball one and do our final takes?
No, I mean, a lot of the questions that you asked him, Josh, were a lot of the ones I had. So
sure. Yeah. Well over half of these questions were written by Chris. I want to make sure that we're clear about that.
They're a little secret. Yeah.
In every single one of these that we do. Okay. So the college basketball question, we're going to make this really simple. Who's winning? Who's winning the tournament?
I want to see history. I want to see Gonzaga. What they did to USC was criminal.
Oh my God, that was assault.
I thought that was going to be a great game. I was like, okay, probably someone's going to challenge Gonzaga. It's that West Coast flavor, USC. I feel terrible for UCLA because they can't score, and that's the problem.
No.
You have to score with Gonzaga. I think a lot of people Gonzaga. I wouldn't mind it. I think Gonzaga is a better team, but who doesn't want to see a perfect season where they just dominated from beginning to end? I remember when they played I don't know if it was the opener. Dallas played Kansas in the early tournament, Maui tournament, and I was like, oh, this will be fun to watch, and was realizing is Kansas not good this year, or is this some fluke? And then you realize, Suggs is the best player in the country. I've grown up with Gonzaga like since I was in like the 4th grade, which tells you how great they've been.
Yeah.
I remember when like Dan Dickow was their best player, or like
Oh
Adam Morris.
gosh, yes.
And it's just like, what kind of program is like Adam Morrison wouldn't even sniff the court with this team now, and that's how much.
No, exactly. It's crazy.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
Blake Step.
Yeah, and so it's crazy how good the program is, but I
Yeah.
assume I'll be surprised if Gonzaga somehow loses because they've just been so consistent.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Who you got,
Yeah, I am
Chris?
too. I think Gonzaga will win it. I'd be happy if Baylor won it. Too. I guess I think that's a great story itself. I didn't even realize just how I think Mitchell, Butler, and Teague, none of those guys were top 100 recruits coming out of high schools. So I mean, and you could argue they have the best backcourt right now in the nation. So I would not be sad at all if Baylor won it, and I do want to see Gonzaga Baylor.
Yeah.
Very much, because I think as far as quality of play on both sides of the court, both Houston and UCLA are very limited offensively. So I'd like to see the quality on both offense and defense in the national championship.
And look, there's been times where Baylor is like, okay, 5 minutes, we're just gonna play defense. Like like, and that'll be the game. And you're just like, man, they're so good. So I agree. I hope it's Baylor. I hope it's Baylor and Gonzaga. And I mean, it feels like it's time for Gonzaga to finally win the championship.
Yeah.
I agree. And I want to be clear about something. I don't feel bad for what's about to happen to UCLA. I don't have anything good to say about any Pac-12 or Big Ten teams. I'm looking forward to the slaughter. I thought it was hilarious what they did to USC. It made me feel way worse about how Kansas was this year. But and then on the Houston side, it's like, hey, it's Kelvin Sampson. Do you really want to see him have anything nice? I don't. Come on, you've ruined 2 programs. I can't wait to see what you do with this one. But anyways, so the last thing we always do is we just have a parting shot, final take, whatever you want to call it, where you can talk about anything you want to. So do you want to defer to Chris or go first?
I want us to go first, just so I can get a feel for this.
Okay, right. So we'll let Chris go.
Okay, so let me just do a quick background change here.
Yeah, so we're certainly Kansas sympathizers. Chris went to school there. I went to university. So, the 34-0 1996 Fort Hays State Tigers. Gonzaga's not going to pass them, so I'm rooting for him.
Yeah. So okay. So just a few things here. 3-time national champion, 903 career wins with a 774. Win percentage. No coach has gotten to 900 wins faster than Roy Williams. I don't know where Mark Few is, but he might be the only person who might actually come close to that down the road. But Roy Williams retiring today definitely took me back quite a bit growing up. I got into college basketball. Funny enough, growing up on the Missouri side of Kansas City, so I got quite a bit of flack growing up in Jackson County for wearing a lot of crimson and blue. But I mean, I was captivated, first by players like, Rex Walters and Adonis Jordan, and then of course the mid 90s teams with Jock Vaughn, Rafe LaFrentz, Paul Pierce. But I didn't really get a whole lot of perspective today because I've been reading a lot of articles in The Athletic today, Nate, about I think CJ actually chimed in with whomever the beat writer is for North Carolina basketball, and just where the program was when Larry Brown left, and just how like a dime in the rough that Roy Williams was when Kansas actually hired him. And lo and behold, he ended up being, in my opinion, I think the best college basketball coach in the last 16 years. Mm-hmm. And if I was going to have a Mount Rushmore of college basketball coaches, he would be up there for me. I'd even put him above Dean Smith. That's how much I think of him. I guess really to close out my whole thing on Roy, and this is more of a personal thing. If you're watching, I was very, very hurt when you left the program back in 2003. to a point where I think I took it too hard, and probably held a lot against you for a lot longer than I should have. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think Roy Williams ended up in the job that he was really meant for at North Carolina. And by no surprise by me, he ended up, I think, again, he's three national titles, close to a fourth one. Just incredible success out of a guy who was just kind of this afterthought of a hire in Lawrence, Kansas at the time, and now 903 wins later, a Hall of Famer all the way. So this is to you, Roy Williams. A great career, and thanks for what you did at the University of Kansas, man.
Cheers. I 100% agree with everything. And by the way, Mark Few has 626 wins and what I believe is 22 seasons, which is about a 28 win a season clip. He's 58, so might be onto something there.
Not a chance.
Might be the only one that can close. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with runway. So, what do you got? You want to go last, or do you want me to go last?
I'll go next.
Okay.
I spent many years growing up in Kansas City, where I'm born and raised, whittling the entire baseball season down to one day. In kids, it's today. When I was growing up, the Royals were not necessarily an afterthought, but more of a laughing stock compared to the rest of the Major League Baseball, especially after the 1994 strike. So for me, a lot of this was like, hey, if the Royals win on opening day, that's kind of our championship. Yep. There's no chance of going to the playoffs. Like, there's no way that like they're ever going to face Derek Jeter and the Yankees and like some ALCS. For so long, that had been the case, and obviously Dave Moore had really built the team up along with Ned Yost. And look, you're still even seeing guys like Salvador Perez, Lorenzo Cain, Eric Hosmer, all of those guys will be very much special in my sports fandom, just because for a 2-year run, it was magical to watch them play baseball every day. Yes, I'm happy that they brought Gerard Dyson back, even though who knows how much he'll play. Yeah, even though who knows how much he'll play.
Very little.
Yeah. So when Michael Taylor swung the bat today, I don't know.
It was a true joy. That, of course, on opening day, when I think they might actually be good or interesting enough to watch compared to previous years since about 2016, that, hey, let's get really excited. Let's show my 5-year-old son the Royals are back. Holy smokes, we have not gotten it out yet. How many runs do they have? It's just like, and so it in a lot of ways reminded me of like growing up in like junior high and high school, where it's just like, oh yeah, like we're really bad. Like we haven't gotten it out. And then in the next half inning, we score 5 runs to tie it.
They tied it, yeah.
They ended up winning today, 14-10. It's the longest game in Royals history for a 9-inning game. Pitching at least looks halfway decent on the reliever side. I don't know what happened with Brad Keller today. Michael A. Taylor, Royals legend. Don't play another game. Don't play another
Coming in Carlos Beltran there,
Don't play another game. I'm still waiting for Bobby Witt Jr. to call him up to make us even more competitive. But obviously, Whit Merrifield, Salvador Perez, Jorge Soler hit another home run that went very, very far. So look, they're a fun team. They've got Wade back. We got Wade Davis back. I mean, it was so much of the old versus the most recent versus like this weird combination of there's still enough people from the old regard to have true beloved nature towards the team to actually want to care and have some affection for these memories that we have for, I guess, the now 5 going on 6 years. But there's enough of these new guys to sort of suggest that, hey, they are starting to turn the page. They're going to be more competitive. Maybe they can, push the Twins somewhere in the middle of the season, and maybe be in that race to get the second wild card spot. Who knows? But to know that I was going to give essentially my entire day to a baseball team was really fun, and to know that they broke my heart and rebuilt it up in an hour just reminds you how fun and magical sports is, because it's just like, how do we ever get any outs, even though there's 9 guys in the field? Like, how are we gonna get any outs? And then you realize, wow, we stuck together. The guys worked hard and went out and they won a baseball game. And there's 161 of these, we hope, left to go. So baseball season is really long, and I admire the writers and the reporters who cover them on a daily basis, along with just the guys doing that to their bodies for 6 months. But for one day, it was really fun to be reminded of baseball and to have fans out at the K, and to know, hey, we can't start any worse than 5 runs down before we ever picked up our bats. But we're 1-0 on the record book.
I used to go to opening day every year, and I think my wife asked me, she's like, what's opening day like? And this was back in the 2000s when we used to go every year. And I was just like, well, just imagine Kauffman Stadium packed, but it's actually mostly Royals fans. Because, I mean, if you went to a sellout other than opening day, it's like mostly Cardinals fans or Yankees fans.
Yeah.
So,
Red Sox.
Yeah, opening day was, So opening day was always like, it was a holiday for me every year. And, but yeah, I share the same sentiment with you, Nate. Like, I'm really excited about this team.
Yeah.
And then to think if they can talk Kelvin Herrera out of retirement, they could actually have all of HDH back. I mean,
why not, right?
To go back to the old guard, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
Well, speaking from somebody who's followed a substantial amount of Colorado Rockies baseball, good luck with Holland and Davis. I hope that works out. I'm certainly rooting for the Royals as well. I've gotten pretty partial to the Brewers. I kind of want to light the Rockies on fire. I watch a lot of baseball. I was going to go the same direction, talking about opening day. And so, we are giving up the day that we're recording, so it's happy opening day for baseball. Every fan has justified reason for hope and optimism, just like you guys said, which is the best part about opening day. And also, a lot of times on opening day, I'll just think about baseball movies, in particular, the GOAT of baseball movies, Kevin Costner. I think he owes us one as a manager, by the way, so Hollywood, do your thing. And anytime I get into a baseball mood, I can picture Crash Davis's big speech that I'm obviously not going to quote the whole thing, but my favorite line is, I believe there ought to be a constitutional amendment outlawing AstroTurf and the designated hitter. AstroTurf has kind of gone the way of the dodo for more sophisticated type of turf type of things. But I 100% agree with the DH comment. I don't like it. I never will, and you can't make me. So go away. And by the way, my favorite baseball movie is Major League. And so, Hey, bartender, Joe Boo needs a refill. So good night. Cheers.
Chiefs. Cheers.
Chiefs.